So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever or whenever you may be, and welcome to the overnight. I am Dean Foss, and joining me tonight is Night Shaft, also known as Shafty.
Good
Uh,
morning. Thank you for having me.
oh, no problem. Thanks for coming.
Yep.
Um, and so, if hang on here just a second, while I'm thinking about it. So, do me a favor and make a comment out in the side chat. Anything
Uh,
you want.
our chat or your YouTube chat.
The YouTube chat, the side chat.
Okay. Let me see. Oh shoot, I was woefully unprepared as usual. Let me hop on my phone real quick.
No problem.
I don't have that dual screen action, so let me just mute that before we get some crazy audio reverb.
No, it's all right. I'm not the greatest at show prep, so I wasn't thinking.
That's
Um,
okay.
but tonight we were going to talk about training, and it kind of came about from a James Yeager quote that somebody brought up on uh, another chat, that it's better to be trained and not have a gun than have a gun and not be trained. And that kind of got me thinking. My initial reaction was no, I don't believe that. And then I thought a little bit about it, and I thought um, there's way back when, in my younger days, I used to teach karate. And when I see clips of, on Instagram or YouTube, people showing techniques, especially with women, when they're showing women self defense techniques, and I'll see them do something that is just that, my initial reaction will be that's going to get them killed, um, based on, their size and what technique they're trying to have them do. The person showing them, the guy is usually, larger, and so the technique will work. But for a woman, not, it's not like the movies where everything you do is a killer punch. And that's just, it's a fact. It's a fact of life. It's a fact of biology. And so that made me kind of rethink that Jaeger quote, because I was basically thinking the same thing, um, in a way.
Um, I think my opinion on that particular Jaeger quote, I definitely don't agree with it, but I think the vein of the argument he's making kind of makes sense. I think he is off base on his delivery, but I mean, I can see the point he's trying to make. I just don't agree with how he's getting there, I think.
That's kind of where I ended up landing, after really thinking about it. Because if what there was a story that came out a week ago where guy breaks into a house, shoots a grandma, and the 8-year old grandkid shoots the um, assailant. And I'm pretty sure that 8-year old isn't trained, but he was able to use the gun. I don't know what happened, afterwards, if the grandma survived or whatever, but he was able to use a gun in self defense with probably no training. I don't know if he had ever shot a gun or held a gun, but I'm guessing he's never taken a tactical class. So that's, you can, having it, I think, is better than not having it.
Um, I think it's easy to get misconstrued on what, I guess, what constitutes training. I think a lot of us immediately go to like tactical courses, or tactical handgun or tactical carbine. That's not always necessarily the case. If even if his dad or his grandpa or whoever showed him, how to use the firearm and how to hit what he's aiming at with the firearm, that's training, that's proficiency, even if it's not coming from some high speed instructor.
Are you on a laptop or computer or your
Yeah, I'm on my laptop.
go into your settings and see if you can into the StreamYard settings. And if you're on the automatic for your microphone, go ahead and turn that off and then turn your mic up a little bit. Mad 60 saying they're having trouble hearing you.
Alrighty. Yeah,
That'll up your volume a little bit.
just distract them while I do that.
No problem. Um, yeah, and then so there were a couple articles that I read through. One was the Christian Science Monitor. They referenced a study by Mount St. Mary's University in conjunction with the National Gun Victims Action Council that talked about training and how um, they felt it was important. And then there's a link to the article in the description if you want to read it. But then looked at things like they also referenced the Concealed Carry University, who I don't know anything about them. But like for in self-defense situations, there's only like a 33% hit rate. So 77% of the shots are go other places other than the bad guy. And then they talk about the pressure and the adrenaline, which is all true. If you've ever been in a situation like that where you get that initial adrenaline rush, that hit, everything kind of goes fuzzy. You lose your small motor skills, and you can get hyper focused on one thing, or you can end up not being able to focus on anything. And that's one thing that training can help you do. It not only what's called muscle memory, where you do something repeatedly so that becomes natural and that's what your body wants to do. And that's good because when you do something wrong, you can feel that it's wrong. But so when you can't think, your body automatically does what it's supposed to be doing most of the time. And then also helps to deal with that pressure where you can't, that the fog of war, basically. And, to caveat this, I've never been shot at or, anywhere, never in a situation where I thought my life was in danger. I've had somebody, swing at me from behind me. Stuff like that. But because of my training, it all was automatic, and I was able to take care of the situation. But so it gives you the ability to, if that initial shock that you start doing what you should be doing, and then hopefully it allows you to see what's going on. And if it's hard to describe, you can, when your brain starts processing the information, and then when you hear descriptions of, an accident or anything like that, where time slows down, it's kind of your body dealing with the situation, and you can only take in so much information, and that training allows you to kind of process that information better. If I'm making sense. And the biggest thing training does, I think, is make you more efficient. But I don't think it should be a mandatory thing to be a gun owner. The other article was by the USCCA and talked about training and how it's good. And I think they said 3 out of 5 gun owners don't have any formal training. But their article talks about how training can be used as a de facto what was I saying earlier? As basically a way to ban guns by requiring setting, you need this much training. Well, they can set an arbitrary training level. You don't meet this training, you don't get to carry a gun. And that, to me, that's against the Second Amendment.
Yeah, first off, I guess hopefully my volume's a little bit better now. It's early, so I'm kind of slouching away from the computer. I'll try and lean in and speak up, and hopefully that'll help. Yeah, I think it establishes a barrier to entry, and that's certainly not in line with the Constitution at all.
Yeah, Woods is bringing up John Lott's data, and I wish they had a better number, because that's such a big spread. But then again, I believe it's true, and I believe you have a moral obligation to understand how to safely use your firearm. But I don't know if it should be a legal one, because of the slippery slope, which I hate that term, but leading to regulation.
No, yeah, I think you're absolutely right with that. And the majority, what's sad about that is the majority of CCW instructors that I've seen really aren't that great trainers. They're there, especially in states that have like an 8-hour requirement to get your CCW. They're there to get you in the class and to pass the class and to get you out. And they're not really focused on the individual student, making them better shooters, just getting them to the point where they can qualify with whatever the state standard is and get them out the door so they can have more students through and more paychecks, basically.
Yeah, the Christian Science Monitor, there's quotes from a police officer, and I think from Minnesota, and then they kind of reference trainers, and I always kind of, I don't think every trainer is out, just to make money, but watching the Texas debates and was it North Carolina, South Carolina, their debates for constitutional carry, listening to the police officers and the trainers saying that you need training and you shouldn't have constitutional carry. it is in their best interest to have the training because they get paid to do training. And, and I'm not trying to disparage all of them. But, that's, I think you have to kind of keep that in mind where it benefits them and they're the ones advocating for it.
I think if they want to make that argument, they should recognize the fact that in police shootings, their standard of accuracy is like 17%. So, I mean, those are people who carry a gun every day, and if they can only make 17% of the shots they have to take, um, it's certainly not fair to require an average civilian to shoot better than that. I think everybody should shoot better than that, but obviously it's situational dependent.
Yeah. And, I had a really good friend that his mother, this was back in the 80s, mid to late 80s. She worked in downtown Seattle, and somebody followed her. She followed her to her car, and she carried nickel plated 38. So she pulled out her revolver, and he turned around and left. And so just having it, is a good thing. And she knew how to shoot and use it. So I think having it and just so you can brandish it isn't enough. You need to be able to point it straight and shoot it straight. But um, again, I think that's your obligation, but not morally, not legally.
Yeah, like how many people do you know that, carry a gun, but they're like, "Oh, I could never pull the trigger." You know what I mean? So I guess, I think all your moral obligation if you're going to carry a firearm is be willing to use the firearm. Um, it does you no good if you carry it, but you've already decided that, you're never going to use it. You're just going to use it as a brandishing tool. And then you almost, I think, put yourself in a more dangerous situation then, because you're in a position where you're not going to shoot and they're just going to take it from you, and then now they're armed and you're not.
Yeah, and that is one thing that why I think training is a good thing. It, um, it can teach you a lot, and I'll say I've never gone to a training class, and I honestly probably never will. Um, but I think training is a good thing, and people that I take to the range who are new shooters or haven't shot a lot, I'll tell them that it's not a bad idea to take a training class if you can.
Yeah, and I've never paid for a tactical course either. What I do primarily is I do the same sort of drills that they teach. I just do them on my own or with friends. And, even if you're not holding yourself to like a shot timer, or super strict standards, you're still getting better, and you're becoming a better shooter, and you're doing it in a way that's cost effective. So I don't think that you have to go pay for training courses. There's lots of great resources on the internet. And there's lots of things that you can do on the flat range that will make you a better shooter, that are training, that isn't a financial barrier to entry.
Yeah, I mean it's the one thing a trainer can bring is an experienced eye to see, if you're doing some. I don't want to say a mistake, but can help make you a better shooter. Find the flaws in what you're doing. Um, so, like I said, I'm not against it. Just I'm against it being mandatory. I think it's suggested, but not shouldn't be mandatory.
Yeah, I agree with that. Um, DJ Play Nice says tact driving is greater than tactical. And I agree with that. But I think a good metric to go by is you should be able at 5 yards. to crank 5 shots off in the A zone of a target as quick as you can. Accuracy shooting is super important, but I think in a self defense situation, it's more about volume of fire in a critical area as opposed to making a one hole group at 7 yards.
Yeah, I agree. And with the training, um, it I kind of lost. I had two thoughts going, and I lost them both. Um, and with now I'm getting all muddled. But uh, you know, training is practice, and there's it can build your efficiency. It's kind of the same way I look at uh, ball ammo versus hollow points. Um, right now, when I carry my 357, it's ball ammo. I'm perfectly fine with that. I think everything else, when I carry it, there are hollow points. Ball ammo has been killing people for 100 years or more, and but the hollow point will be more efficient at it. Go ahead.
No, I was going to agree with you. Yeah, ball ammo's absolutely put a bunch of people in the dirt. I think hollow points are nice though, especially like if you're in the house or say you're walking the dog or walking the kids in some neighborhood and some guy, jumps out and tries to stab you for your wallet. You could have houses behind that guy. You could have other people behind them. So you over penetration might be a thing, and unintentional fire might be a thing. So I think if all you can afford to carry is ball ammo, you're probably good in most situations. But I do think hollow points have their place.
Oh, I definitely do. Like I said, that most of the time that's what I have. But um, if I just have round nose, I'm fine with round nose personally. But
Yeah, me too. Um, I just had to shoot a raccoon in our barn with my shield the other day, and I actually this was out of it's a 3-inch barrel, 9 millimeter, and I was carrying federal HSTs, and at like 5 yards, it didn't actually expand. It was still pretty much all together when I got it out. So I guess you have to understand that, like, if you carry a subcompact, the hollow point probably isn't going to expand because it doesn't get high enough velocity. That's something to be aware of too.
yeah, that's the other time um, when I carry my PPK. That's just ball ammo because it doesn't move fast enough to expand. I think, it's either I think it's Underwood is the only one that will expand um, a decent amount and fairly regularly. But you know,
Yeah. If it's a subcompact, I don't think there's any net benefit to it.
and to go back to Warsaw Patriot comment. Um, yeah, I think it is. It's a constitutional right that is supposed to be protected, and it somewhat mirrors. I missed it. Kind of goes along with what Woods was saying, because the gun laws are kind of racist, and that's the history of gun laws is to be racist,
Yeah,
to
very
keep
much so.
the guns out of the hands of the undesirables. which at the time were um, blacks.
If I could just play devil's advocate for a moment, the First Amendment is also constitutionally protected. Um, they say endowed by the Creator, and it's an unalienable right. But here's the thing: like, look at like the ATF's recent proposed legislation or their proposed change in regulation. They open that up for comments to the public because First Amendment they have to, but you're not going to give them a convincing argument if you don't know how to spell. So there's some training involved there too.
Well, proofread, proofread what you write. Uh,
I'm just my point is you have to have a little bit of proficiency to be effective.
yeah, and yeah, I don't want to get into the ATF part. That that's going to take us
Yeah, we
kind of
can leave
off
that.
into
We
the
can leave
weeds.
that alone. That's outside the scope of what you want to talk about today.
Um, so that's it's kind of where and I've heard other gun channels which are a lot bigger and probably better than mine say something similar to what Jaeger said, that you shouldn't carry if you're not trained, which I just can't get behind. Um, you know, I think even if you carried a gun with a magazine out, in your other pocket, that's not that's not the best way to carry, and it's you know probably wholly ineffective. But you have the pieces to protect yourself in some situations, which you wouldn't have if you didn't have the parts of your gun in your pockets.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a difficult argument, because the constitutional side of me says, yeah, that's wrong, but the I don't know the threat motivated side of me um, wants people to be less of a danger to themselves and others when they carry, and that goes back to I think what you talk about as far as a moral responsibility, even if it's not a legal responsibility. And I think it's a very fine line. And like I said, I think I can understand where these people are coming from. I think they're just off base in the argument that they're making. And then there's always a lot of these guys get kickbacks for that stuff, so there's some financial motivation as well that skews their opinions and other things.
Well, to bring up the Texas and whichever Carolina in the arguments, and I've heard this, scores of other places, about training, people not being trained in carrying and it being dangerous. There's not, if that's true, where are all the stories of all these errant shots going, other than like drive-by shootings where they will shoot up a house and then hit another house or hit everybody standing around who they want to hit. It's not somebody caring for self-protection walking down the street, accidentally shooting a lot of people.
Well,
You
no,
know,
I don't think that you see it there. I think generally people that do carry, and in order to carry your gun every day, you have to have some level of self comfort in doing so. So I think the majority of people that carry their guns are proficient enough that they're probably not going to do that. Where you see it is like people who have negligent discharges at home. and they end up putting a round through the floor or through the ceiling, or they shoot themselves in the leg, or God forbid they hit a kid because they're messing around with a gun they're not familiar with, and end up firing it while they're in their house.
Well, yeah, but for those situations, I think that's where if if your kid if you leave your gun laying around and your kid gets your gun and something happens, you are legally responsible for what happened.
Yeah.
If somebody steals your gun, no, that's different. Because that wasn't negligence, that was somebody, committing a crime to get your gun. But that's what part of the law should cover that.
Well, in many states it does. At least in my state it does. But this could be, incorrect of me, but I tend to lump in stuff like that with people who don't have the respect and proficiency that comes with owning a firearm. And again, not necessarily professional training, but like the education and the know-how of how to handle it in a safe manner, whether you're at home or whether you're outside. So again, that could be mentally incorrect to me, but I just lump them both together.
Yeah. Um, yeah, just to touch on Warsaw's. Um, most of the shootings are, I can't remember how many counties. It's like, you know, most of the shooting deaths happen in like 7 counties, and they're, Democrat states or Democrat counties. But I don't know the statistics on it, so um, that's more of an opinion. Just kind of hearsay what I've heard.
Yeah, if you listen to Lightfoot, it's Indiana's fault too. It's not their management.
Well, that gets into the states that blame the states next to them. Well, why don't the states next to you have the same problem that you have?
Yeah, exactly. It's a self defeating argument. But speaking of those crime rates going up, have you seen some of the shooting statistics out of Seattle in the last 12 months? Now that
No,
they've funded their police departments.
I've kind of heard them for other ones, but I haven't heard on Seattle.
I was just looking at a story right before I got on that they were talking about it. I guess there was just a bus driver who was just shot just driving his bus route yesterday, and they were talking about how they've had this huge uptick in violence from defunding their police departments.
Yeah, I saw that. That was Portland.
Oh yeah, you're right. It was Portland, not Seattle. I get them confused.
Yeah, what's the difference? One has more money, basically. That's the difference.
Yeah. Okay. Um. Let's see. So I'm just reading back through the comments, looking at what I've missed. Yeah, you have to. Okay, so like P&W Woods, um, in his or second to last comment, is talking about how they tell you have to buy products to be good enough. Um, yeah, absolutely, but there is something to be said um, on carrying gear that's up to snuff for daily use. Some pistols aren't um, reliable enough to be CCW pistols, and some guns have junk magazines. So I don't think that you have to spend a lot of money to be able to protect yourself, but I do think that you should find something that you can rely on, and sometimes you have to pay a little bit for that.
Yeah, and that, that'll bring into, actually going to the range and shooting your gun, and then you get to know your gun. And I used to carry a Walther PK 380, and it was really unreliable. And it seemed either you got a good one that would shoot everything, or you get one like mine, which was really picky on what you fed it, and still would, you know, wouldn't always go back in the battery. And I found that out by taking it to the range, and then I still keep it because it's a soft enough shooting gun, and it's kind of a little smaller, but not compact size. Not really compact-ish for new shooters. And then we just deal with, when it doesn't go bang every time. I tell them there's a chance it may not go off. Just hold on, and then we'll deal with fixing it.
Yeah, and I would consider those range trips to find that stuff out as part of training. It's not training that you pay for, but it's training that you're giving yourself. And
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who have bought a gun, loaded it full of ammunition, and they've carried it for 5 years and they've never shot it in that 5 years. I don't know. That's just that's a little irresponsible, I think. Because then you don't know what's going to happen when you do pull the trigger. Like I know an older woman who carries Smith and Wesson Bodyguard, and she's had it for 5 or 6 years. And every time I talk to her, I ask her if she's gone and shot it, and her answer is always no. Especially she's not super proficient with firearms, and she's never shot a pocket size 380. So who knows what's going to happen if she does have to pull the trigger. It might jump right out of her hands, and she's not prepared for that.
Yeah. You should take her to the range. Tell her, hey, let's go.
No, I've offered many times.
There was one of the guys that I did a video on, the take your friend to the range. He had a car 9mm, and I forget how long he had it, and he told me he had never shot it. So I said, well, what are you doing Sunday? We'll go shoot it. And he shot it, and he loved it, and I forget how many rounds he ended up shooting. Kept going to the range desk and buying boxes of ammo and stuff. And I don't know, the cars are kind of neat little guns. I really liked it, other than it being a striker fire, which I prefer hammers.
I was going to ask if you got to shoot it. Those cars are cool little pistols. I've never shot one, but I've handled a few of them.
It was, I was surprised it was pretty soft shooting, I thought, for its. And I don't know, I can never remember what model it was, and they all look the same. So I'm not sure which one it was, but
was it the compact single stack?
It was. I think it was a CT9, but I couldn't say for sure.
Gotcha.
But for the size, it wasn't a lot of recoil to it. I was kind of surprised by it.
Yeah, I think the cars tend to err on the long side when it comes to like their grip length, and that's always a plus, especially in a 9mm. Like when I shoot my shield, I can absolutely tell the difference between the 7-round magazine and the 8-round magazine, and how much of a difference it makes to get your pinky on the gun as far as control.
Yeah, and kind of so we're talking about reliability. I had somebody ask me about my witness, my 10mm witness, like steel compact, and I had done a video. I think in the video I said that the recoil spring broke and I would do an update, and I never did. And they asked me, hey, did you ever do an update? And I didn't, just because it ended up taking so long, and was kind of upset. So I ended up trading in that. Once I finally got the recoil spring, I cleaned it, immediately went down to the gun shop and traded it for a CZ.
Yeah, I actually
75 compact.
On a witness 10 millimeter because of your video.
And I didn't make a video because I was upset, and I didn't want to shit on the gun or the manufacturer, because I hadn't seen a lot of people complaining about it, and I didn't want to unfairly do an unfair review, update. So I ended up just not doing it, and partly because of that, and partly I was just, I didn't want anything more to do with it. And the biggest problem was there's not a lot of them out there, so there's hardly anything in secondary market. There's no springs other than from the manufacturer that I could find, and they had to come out of Italy, and because of the COVID, nothing was coming out of Italy, so it took like 8 months to finally get it. And then they put a note on it saying it was a courtesy, and then I'm like, okay, well, you guys
sold you the faulty gun from the factory, and it's hey.
Well, the problem is the recoil spring setup. It uses a dual recoil spring, but it's a two loose springs, one smaller spring inside a bigger spring, and I think the springs are underpowered, and that's why they broke. Because I use factory ammo, I use SIG when I could get it. That's all I shot when it happened, and I don't know.
SIG isn't even like full house 10 millimeter either. It's kind of on, for 10 millimeter loads, it's on the slower side. I almost wonder if maybe they're using the 9 millimeter recoil spring for cost savings and then just adding that second one.
That's honestly what I thought. But I had read, the little bit I could find, people had used spring set. I forget who it was.
So
but from
if you could use one from like a CZ97 and make that work.
Well, somebody had commented, about a month ago that they had cut down another spring from another gun, and used it, but I had already got rid of it. So I had tried. There was a spring kit that for a 40, the 40 witness, that had different weight springs that some people had said, but most of what you find was for the polymer 10 millimeters. Most of the information. So I don't know if that's what they were talking about, but when I tried to use it, all it did was compress the spring. So you start out, and first magazine would be great, and then by the second magazine, the spring would be a quarter-inch shorter.
Oh wow!
And so I just, I didn't want to deal with it anymore.
And that's stuff you don't find out unless you shoot your guns.
Yeah, and it was, it was a good gun, fairly good gun up till then. I liked it. The being underpowered spring, the casings would come out, hit the wall of the stall, and then still go 8 feet behind me.
Yeah, and even go ahead, sorry.
I was standing behind a friend of mine when he was shooting it, and I was 3-4 feet behind him, and it felt like somebody was throwing them at me when they would hit me.
Well, like even if the spring didn't fail, that can't be safe if unlocking pressure is still so high that it's throwing them that hard. I worry about the wear on the slide rails.
Yeah.
On the takedown lever, eventually it will fail from something else if the spring doesn't, if it's operating under that high of pressure and that that much velocity.
But like I said, I traded it in and haven't had any problems with my compact CZ75. It's a little snappier than I expected for being all steel, but
yeah,
it carries pretty nicely,
Yeah. And I guess back to circle all the way back to failing to train is training to fail. That's not just with guns either. I think it's easy to get stuck on firearms, but also with also it kind of harkens back to like your holsters and your gun belts and all your other stuff. Um, I think you should be practicing shooting from the draw because that's what real life looks like. And if you have a holster that's not conducive to that, you're not going to find out unless you do it. And the last thing that you want to do is shoot yourself in the leg while you're trying to, you know, uncover your firearm and draw your firearm. So I don't know. It's easy to get stuck on the gun part, but there's all kinds of things that fall under that training category that aren't just the gun itself.
That's true, and I think it can get expensive, and that's something that keeps people from, looking more into that. Like you can go through a lot of holsters until you find one that works well for you.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people can afford to buy 3 or 4 holsters till they find one they like, and they'll make what they have, work. It may not work the best, but that's what they got.
Yeah. Well, and then in that case, you would have to train yourself to overcome the mechanical deficiencies of your carry method. I'm just trying to make myself branch out from just the gun aspect. I mean,
No,
that carries into all sorts of things. Like even like yesterday, I was putting raised beds in my backyard. Um, nobody can just go out and plant a garden and be 100% successful if you've never done it before. It's just like everything else.
no, that's true, and you sometimes you just got to do it, and then keep doing it until you get it right.
Yeah.
It's like with doing YouTube. Um, I started. I didn't know what I was doing, and I still struggle at it. And just decided I'm going to do it. If people watch, you know, that's great. If they don't watch, I'm still going to do it because I want to. I want to promote my whole channel is about promoting the Second Amendment and gun ownership, and that's the way most of the videos I do are geared. Kind of newer gun owners, because I'm kind of fit in that newer. I've shot guns before, but haven't owned guns until fairly recently. Um, and I wanted to do something, and then G Webs kept poking and saying, "Do something, do something." Um,
Don't talk
so,
about it. Be about it.
so I decided I'm going to do something, and that's what this is. I probably don't do it the best way, but hopefully, each time I do it, it gets a little better. That's,
Yeah. Whole point is doing it until it becomes second nature. Then you don't have to think about it as much. Just like
yeah.
with anything else.
And that's where, as we go back to training, that's what training can give you, where it's second nature to do what you need to do without thinking about what you're doing.
Yeah. I guess the crux of the argument is should it be mandatory? No. But it could also very well save your life.
Yeah,
And
I will never support training being mandatory.
yeah.
But I will always, promote people training. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, and I've even if like not for the tactical aspect of it, I think when you go to the range and you have a plan on what you're going to do, even if it's something pretty basic, I usually get more fulfillment out of shooting when I have a plan when I go. Um, you're pretty much always going to walk away a little bit better of a shooter, but I don't know. It's like working out. There's a satisfaction when you go to the range and you do a couple drills. It feels like there's more substance to what you're doing other than just, counting how much each shot of 9mm costs going down the pipe.
I don't know. When I go, it's usually, kind of target practice, and then I'll work in some drills. I can't draw from the holster at the range, so I'll work on, you know, either doing 2 shots to the body, one to the head, something like that, or if I've got one of the targets with multiple bullseyes, one of the ones with 6, then I'll go, quick succession from bullseye to bullseye to,
Yeah.
change targets
Practice.
quickly.
And that can you're kind of talking about when you get an adrenaline rush, you kind of get tunnel vision, and practicing target transitions like that can help with that. Even if it doesn't help a lot, it helps a little bit. Um, and if you live somewhere like that's it, I don't like I've got private property that I can go shoot on, and I forget that a lot of people don't have that. Um, if you can't practice drawing from the holster and firing, that's something that you can do at home with dry fire for free. And I would recommend anybody that can do that practice that. It doesn't cost
Yeah,
you just your time.
that's another. You can draw from the holster. When you're dry firing. That's what before I carried, because I was nervous about carrying. So before I carried, I worked on being able to draw and present without fingering the trigger.
Yeah, and I don't know the actual statistics, so I'm probably talking out of my ass here, but from what I've seen, just on like the fail section of YouTube, it seems like almost more people have NDs when they reholster their firearms than when they actually draw their firearms. So I work on reholstering too, just because you have to practice, getting your shirt out of the way so there's nothing in the trigger guard as your gun's
Yeah.
pointing. And it's all important, but that can get overlooked sometimes too.
Yeah. Then also I'll work on different positions. Where I'm sitting. If I'm sitting, then if I have to fire to my right, firing to my left. Different angles. Um, and that's all stuff you can do dry firing. And if you work on trigger pull, and that's just you and an empty gun and your holster or whatever. Um, and then if you want to get one of the laser systems, you can do that. I have the X something or other. I forget the name of it right now. Which I did a video on, a review of it, which I thought was good. I somehow have lost the laser bullet for it, so I haven't been using it, so I can find it again. But
Yeah, I haven't played with any laser systems yet, but they seem cool.
there's like you're saying, there's lots you can work on just dry fire practicing.
Yeah, and it doesn't cost you a dime, and it makes you more proficient. And I'm always for that. It shouldn't be required, but I'm always for it.
I think I don't do enough, and most of it will be after I clean my guns. Then while I'm sitting there, I'll do dry fire practice.
Um, yeah, if you talk to my wife, she hates it, but like I'll sit down on the couch and watch a movie, and I'll just grab whatever, pistol I'm carrying at the time, and I'll clear it. And even if I'm not drawing from the holster, I'll bring the gun up, and I'll look at like the light switch, or a character on the TV, and do dry fire. Just making sure my sights stay aligned and my trigger press is nice. Um, Again, my wife hates it, but I dry fire a lot, and that's primarily when I do it.
So, for the last few minutes, why don't you tell everybody about your channel?
Oh boy. Well, it's a dumpster fire. So if you come on over, be ready for some craziness. I don't just do gun stuff. I just do stuff that's fun for me. Um, I have a couple videos that are geared, towards newer people in the community. I have a couple videos that are geared more towards prepping. I'm gonna have a couple coming out that are a little bit more high speed. Um, Stuff that average gun owners don't have or don't typically do. Like I'm gonna do a couple plate carrier videos, and because when I go to the range and shoot rifle, I always have my plate carrier on. I never shoot my rifle without it on. It's just one of those things like train how you fight. So here in the near future, I'm gonna be going over how I have my stuff set up and why I have it set up that way. Um,
When you get a
couple
chance, drop a link for your channel in the chat.
Okay, and then like I'll be here in the near future. When I get this next AR built, I'm gonna be going over a couple different AR builds and why I build them for different ways. And I think I don't know. Everything is situational dependent, and not everybody has infinite budget. I certainly don't, but I've been pretty good over the years about getting things slowly but surely. And I think there's a lot of overload, especially when you start getting into like tactical carbines. And I'm just going to make a reference video here shortly about why you might want to do different things in a easily digestible format. For somebody who might be looking to put their first rifle together, if that makes sense.
Yep, and great thing about ARs is they're really versatile, um, easy to put together. Really,
Yeah.
there's couple little fiddly bits that you have to deal with, but overall, I think just about anybody can do it. It's just once you've done it and you see how it's done, you see how easy it really is.
Yeah. And I think this is just going to be a reference video on, like, I'm going to have three of them put together entirely different ways. And I'm just going to go through, why each method might be better for you, because nobody's situation is the same. But I'm going to try and put together a few that I think cover most of the bases, and that's all you can really do, um, just as a reference guide for people. But yeah, occasionally I do a live chat, depending who's available. And then sometimes I just hang out and play video games with my wife. So that can be comedically kind of fun, even if it's not gun content. Um, but yeah, I do lots of stuff. So if
And
anybody felt
when
like
is
checking me out, I'd be very humbled and I'd be very appreciative.
when is that chat that you do sometimes?
Um, every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. And again, it's all dependent on who's available. So I don't always do it. So if you get a notification, I might not go live. It just depends.
Yeah, someday I'll make it.
I try and put out content at least once a week. So if I don't do that chat, I usually do something else.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
Makes my job a lot easier.
Yeah, so late.
Yeah.
I guess so early in the morning. I can understand it'd probably be hard to get people sometimes, but Yeah, anytime you need me to fill in, I'm here for you, man. This is normally when I get up for work anyway, so um, it's not a big stretch on me to get up a little bit early on a Sunday.
Okay, and hopefully we covered the topic. I got a little rambly, a little unfocused, so sorry about that. But appreciate everybody tuning in, and if you're catching this in replay, go ahead and leave a comment. Um, we can keep the conversation going, even afterwards. I do read every comment and try to reply to everybody. And so everybody have a good morning and a good Sunday.
You still here? It's over. Go home. Go.